everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. my crystal started jumping in my hand. It's so good to see you. There's a lot going on. I'm going to try and just hone it all in and give it to you in a nice little package to help you understand what's going on energetically and the best path forward for this week coming up. All right, so the first thing, let's talk about energy. Energy has been crazy high. So there's a lot to solar weather that I have yet to fully understand. But we've been getting a ton of solar wind. Yesterday, solar winds got so high that a girl in the universe put it really well. She said they got so high, it was like doing like 110 miles an hour in a 55 zone. So that kind of speed. And so that energy is rushing at us and it can go really fast. And that energy sometimes can feel like, well, we feel it in all sorts of ways. Lately for me, it's been really disrupting my sleep. So I feel like for the most part, when there's not this surge of energy going on, I sleep fairly soundly. But the last few nights, it's been tossing, turning. And that also had to do with the fact that last Monday, the KP index was up at a 6. And we're still kind of coming down from that energy. So the highest it goes is 9. So a 6 is pretty significant. You get put in the red zone when you're at a KP6. That means there's high geomagnetic storms. It interferes with radio signals. It interferes with things like GPS. And it interferes with us. We feel it as well. And sometimes what that can feel like is, like for example, with my son, he gets lots of energy. He becomes like this super hyper full of energy person where like the rest of my family, we all felt like, oh, today. It was really intense. That kind of being feeling fine and then kind of hitting a wall. And so you're going to notice that you want to kind of think back over the last few days. How has your energy been? Have you been sleeping well? Do you wake up and feel tired like you didn't sleep at all last night even though you did? How's your body doing? Are you noticing like fluctuations in your body? These are just some of the things that we track while we're going through all these big energy storms and upgrades that are going on. And there are upgrades that come with this. And what I mean by that is the weather, the sun is a big part of our ascension. It's helping us to literally transform our bodies starting at the cellular level. So we're rebuilding who we are as human beings. The deeper we go into this ascension, and it's activating strands of DNA, and we're changing very subtly our molecular structure all along. And so we're going through this really weird morphing process, and radiation's definitely a part of it. And I don't want you to get scared by that because, you know, radiation often is associated with sickness. But in this case, it's more like radiation like what X-Men receive, right? Like it's changing you on a molecular level, but it's doing it in like a micro dosing but constant micro dosing manner. And it's been doing it for years. We've been through this, like I would say that like maybe 2012 was the kind of like start point when this really started generating. But even before that, we were building up to this time period where we were really going to feel this. So as we're going through it, we're going to feel a lot of things physically. We're going to feel a lot of things emotionally and some things spiritually as well, because we're shifting all the time. Now we're coming up to another big point in energy, because on Monday we have the new moon in Scorpio, and it feels like a continuation to me of the eclipse season we just went through. So we just had our 2 eclipses and we're moving into Scorpio, but the themes are matching because of how Scorpio focuses on deep understanding of the truth. It focuses on power dynamics and it focuses on transformation. So we've got these really heavy topics, this really big period of time, and the eclipses were all about this transformation as well. So we're going to continue with that energy. And that reminds me, there is the new moon spirit circle on Monday, November 13th. If you'd like to join, here is the link. It's also in the description below. And you can definitely join, hear about how the energy is working together. I'm going to guide you through some practices as we work with manifesting with this very potent new moon. And of course, we're going to be doing psychic Q&A afterwards. So if you want to join me, that is happening on Monday. Check it out. Here's the link again. And one more thing before I forget, because it's very important. Next week, I will be holding the Epic Year Workshop 2024. And this one I'm really excited about because with the Epic Year Workshop, I'm always helping to guide you to create goals and systems to go with those goals to help you achieve the life of your dreams, working with your own personal energy signature, where you're creating goals that are in alignment with how your energy is flowing instead of flowing against it. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take, for example, maybe your energy is telling you you're in a period where rest and meditation are the way to move forward. But if you create goals without knowing that, you might create very ambitious goals where you're asking yourself to take a lot of action or move out of your comfort zone, make big moves. And if you're trying to do that in a period where the rest and meditation is the faster path for you, then you're going to create a lot of frustration in your life and create feelings where you're like, why is it that no matter how hard I work or how far I put myself out there, this doesn't gel? It has to do with your personal vibration and your energetic signature and where it's at in this point in time right now. So if you want to learn about that, check out the Epic Year Workshop. You can go to the link in the description. It'll take you there. The doors close on that this Sunday, November 12th, and I'd love to have you join me and not only teach you how to build goals that are in alignment with your vibration, but also how to create the systems that will help you achieve those goals, because a goal is just an endpoint. The system is how you get there, and I'm so excited to go over that with you. So if that sounds like something that's in alignment for you, check it out. This is the link. It's also in the description below, and I'd love to see you there. So now I want to share with you the message from the team. And this time the team's got a story to tell you, and I'm really very interested in the way that this story is built. So they gave me a little set of cards. I'm going to take you through each one and explain the message that they have for you this week. All right, so here's the story. They want you to know that there is something that's been going on in your life for a while that has been creating a sense of being out of alignment with reality. So meaning like you're telling a story that is a self-deception about something. Maybe it's telling a self-deception about how people view you, right? Or your relationships or your value in the world. And this self-perception is being bolstered by your ego. So once your ego caught wind of this story that you were telling, it went, ooh, that's good. That's definitely going to keep you in a place where you'll be too tired to fight me. And if I use it against you continuously and I keep embellishing it, then you're going to let me be in charge, which is what the ego wants, right? The ego thinks it's here to rule. It doesn't know it's just a tool. So the ego got hold of this story that you were telling yourself. So again, this story is based on deception. It's based on a false perception you were holding. And it may be a really old story, one that you started telling yourself when you were quite young. For example, if you had parents that had to work all the time and you felt like you were neglected. I'm not saying that that feeling isn't necessarily how you felt or there wasn't any truth to it. But the story you had to tell yourself to help explain why you were going through a painful situation, that became the story of deception. And what I mean by that is you might have told yourself, well, no one's here and no one's paying attention to me, so I must not have any value. And that's the story that's been activating. So I want you to think about that. What is the story that you tell yourself when things don't work out? What's a scenario that's going on in your life that seems to repeat? It's like it's like people always what? Do people always betray you? Is it no matter how hard you work, you never get very far? Or is it people just don't seem to like you or care about your needs? No one's ever caring about your needs. I want you to think about the story and how long it's been with you, because this is something that's coming to an end. It cannot go with you anymore. And I know sometimes I might sound like a broken record because the team keeps saying, you can't take it with you anymore. The universe wants you to know. Source wants you to know. This can't go higher. This ends here. It has to. It's kind of like, here's your choices. You get to hold on to this story But then you have to stay in these lower frequencies because that's as far as it can go. It can't go any further. It doesn't have access or validity in the higher realms because once you hit love, well, this story dissolves, right? There's just nothing to it. So if you need to hold on to the story, you have to stay in lower vibrations. If you want to keep moving forward, this has to finally dissolve. And I want you to know that with this moon, right? So here we go, moon in Scorpio. With this moon, the truth gets revealed. And here's why. Because we have a stellium happening in Scorpio. It was happening last week with the last full moon, actually. We had this stellium in Scorpio, and we have it again, but it's getting bigger, and the moon is included. So when the moon is included, the moon represents our emotional state, but it also represents our intuition, right? And activating. And with a stellium in Scorpio, we've got the sun, the moon, we've got Mercury and Mars. And all of this is about, I want to know the truth. I am going to get to the heart of this. That means you're finally going to see what this is. This little story that's taken over and influenced so much of your life, no matter how long you've had it. It's been an influence on you. It's something that you just keep using to explain why something continues to show up. What you might not realize is that the reason it continues to show up is because of the story. So the story has that sort of catch-22 to it. It's like the story was there to explain why it happened, and then now it keeps happening because of the story. So with this new moon, it's imagine a huge spotlight. You're in the dark, right? And all of a sudden this huge spotlight appears and it's shining right on this thing. It's going to be out in the open. The truth will be right there. It'll be so clear to you what this has been. And this, when the moon is in this reverse position, it talks about that insight, the intuition is activated. When it's in this position, it talks about a deception. No longer will you be deceived. You will get to see it now. It will be very clear. And in some cases, it might feel very painful. When you finally realize that the enemy that you thought was out there all along turns out to be you. It was just you looking into a mirror, or projecting it onto someone. And you're like, holy crap, am I the bad guy? Am I the bad guy? That kind of feeling, that could be very painful to discover that the one that's been hurting you the most is yourself. And, we probably all had these moments where we've come to that realization. It can be a very painful realization to come to, because then you realize geez Louise, all this suffering I've experienced has been at my own hands. And then it can be very easy to fall into the emotion of feeling worse about yourself. But here's what I want to give you, and here's what I believe it's really going to feel like. I feel like instead of you going, damn it, I did this to myself, what a horrible person, why, no wonder bad things happen to me because look at how horrible I've been. Instead of that, that's not going to happen. Instead, we're going to look at it and be like, I'm the problem, it's me, right? Like Taylor Swift says, I'm the problem, it's me. And instead of seeing it as something like, how could I have been so dumb or hurtful or whatever, we're going to go, I wonder what I was trying to give to myself. I wonder what awareness I was trying to help myself see. So rather than spending time condemning ourselves for being such a problem in our life, we're going to go, okay, nothing is given to me without a reason. Nothing's happening without a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Even the pain and suffering I put myself through serves a purpose. And now I see it. I see how this is teaching me. I see how this is shaping me. I see what it's here to give me. It's showing me that I had the power the whole time and I simply didn't use it, right? I have a kind of silly story that would illustrate this point. So I have an Etsy shop. Maybe some of you know me from my Etsy shop, and if you do, hi, I love you. Thank you so much for shopping with me. But I remember years ago, before I had really honed in on what I wanted to do with it, I would make little decorative matchboxes, and I would put so much time and energy into these. I'd paint them, I'd collage them, I would put resin on them. They were very chic looking matchboxes, and I would sell them for $5 for a set of two, which is a great steal. If you found it, you'd be like, wow, that's so cool. These are so cool little keepsake boxes. But in reality, I was costing myself money by making them. So I was losing money making them, and I would sell them, and it would actually get worse because just to buy the supplies to make them didn't even cover it, right? There was just this really bad energy. And in my head, I was telling myself I'm doing everything right. I mean, they're beautiful products and they're such a great price. I don't understand why it's costing more money to keep this store open than to make these products. Now you might be listening going, God, Therese, isn't it obvious? Like, that's not going to support you. No, it was not obvious. And you know why? Because I had a story about my value and worth, and how I didn't believe at the time that I could ask for more. I didn't think that people would value the effort I put into it. And so, but the story was, no, it wasn't that other people weren't valuing it, as I didn't value myself enough to recognize what I was doing. And so I was causing great pain and suffering in my own life by undervaluing myself constantly and not getting anywhere. It was literally like I was working so hard and just spinning my wheels, and instead of getting out of the mud, I was going deeper into the mud, right? So my point is that was sort of the precursor to me losing my home back in 2014. That was part of the lead up to it. It was that the reason I lost my home at the time was that I so couldn't ask for what I deserved, and I couldn't claim my value because I couldn't see it. And because of that, I put myself in situations where I literally was like churning and couldn't get out. And the reason I want to share it with you is because after going through that whole situation and getting out of it and being able to look back, I realized my team had said to me, play bigger. And I didn't know what they meant. They wanted me to play bigger, like take bigger risks, have a bigger goal for myself. And at the time when I was doing that, I thought I was playing pretty big. And of course, now I can look back and see like I was playing so small, and I was undervaluing myself. And when you do that to yourself, it reflects out, right? Like you're going to get that back, that you're undervalued. And so the story I told myself at the time is, no one values me. I work so hard, I put all this out there, and there's no one valuing me. When in reality, when I finally could see myself, when the deception cleared and I could see who was there, it was me. And the problem was me and how I valued myself. And so it was hard to see it. It was hard to look at that. It was a little hard to accept it because I had told myself, and I believed that I was putting myself out there and being so brave and following my heart, but I was doing it in such a small and almost self-sabotaging way. And it took a while to see it. But once I saw it, and once I realized that the one I was needing to value me was myself, well, that's when the tables literally turned and things changed for the better. And now I'm here with you, putting myself out there. I can keep doing, like I'm hearing my team go, you can go further. And I get it. I can go further. But my point is that sometimes we need to take a cold, hard look at how are we treating ourselves and what are we saying to ourselves and what is the result of that, right? So if you're getting results that you don't like, you need to look at how you're operating. And it's usually maybe like 5 to 10% other people and really like 90 to 95% you with yourself. And once you see that, then it's like the world opens up. Now suddenly you're set free from this prison that you created for yourself. Now you can see it, and now you can make a change. And so the beautiful thing is, you might find that the one who's been making your life hard might be the self. But instead of being down on yourself and using that as another reason to double down on this old story, you're going to see the light and you're going to choose the path that actually sets you free. I love this card. This is the Strength card. And the Strength card is such a beautiful card because it's about psychological well-being. And what it shows is this woman with a lion, and the woman is, in this card, she's kind of like doing her own thing. But in the traditional card, you see her petting the lion. The lion represents our primitive animal-based nature. And the woman represents higher consciousness, her psychological self. And it shows that you create strength, confidence, and change in your state, not by berating yourself, but by gently loving and appreciating and accepting what's there. When you see what's there, the beast within calms itself. It's calm, it's quiet, it's receptive to a higher will. And so that's what's going to happen. So as you get clear on who is telling the story, on who's creating the suffering, as you get clearer and clearer on that, the result is this higher self, our higher self stepping forward and putting its hand on the very animal self, the human self, and saying, you know what? That's just your nature. And it serves a purpose. Just like wildness in an animal serves a purpose, right? But it's not always appropriate. Our humanness, the way that we make mistakes, the way that we tell stories and project, it also serves a purpose. And when you introduce the higher self, you seek to understand, not to control. And when you approach yourself in that way, that I want to understand myself, not control myself, and not berate myself, then this whole energy softens and it calms, and the two become one, right? The higher self and the animal self come together and become one and start cooperating. And then life becomes even more, it's really when you really step into this ability that I'm creating this, and therefore I get to choose what I create. And I'm asking this other part of me to co-create instead of trying to, tame it or lock it down. I'm trying to connect with it and understand it and ask it to work with me. And so it's the start of a very powerful period of time for all of us. So I hope you appreciate and understand what's coming is, no matter how hard it could be to look at sometimes, and maybe it'll be lighter for you, maybe it might be harder, but whatever it shows you, it's not showing you that to shame you or guilt you or make you feel bad. It's showing it to you to liberate you. And I think that this time you get the key and you set yourself free. And with that, let's look at this week's karma cards. All right, if you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks here: planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message for this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers, a set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with that beautiful intuition of yours and feel, what is it you need this week? Are you looking for action or are you looking for outcome? And of course, you can always choose both. While you're choosing, let me tell you the timing for this reading. This reading is for November 8th through the 15th. And for the flavor of this reading, we've got the sun. I love the sun. The sun is all about like realizing or something coming to light. It's coming out very much in line with the message from the team. Something's going to be expressed and seen. And the sign, we got another daily double. This has been happening a lot more lately. It just blows my mind. In the consecutive signs of Sagittarius and Capricorn. So we're looking at both our higher mind, so like I said, the higher self or our ideals, what we're growing to, our values and philosophies, as well as how you put that out into the world, like how you give that out is coming out as well. In the 7th house of relationships. All right, so if you're looking for action, your spiritual action at this time is to demonstrate your highest ideals and goals diplomatically. So one of the things that's really important to remember is that as we're moving through these waves of energy, we're doing it as a group, and we're all kind of going together through these waves of like, oh my gosh, this is the problem and it's me and it's what I'm going through, and like, you know, like I'm so stunned, right? And people deal with it differently. So we're all going through the same lesson together, but we're at different stages and in different levels of it, understanding and acceptance. So it's asking you to connect with your highest ideals and your goals, and doing it diplomatically simply means that we're being aware that, okay, let's say you get there first. Let's say you're like, oh, gone through it, I see the light, I've accepted it, I moved through, and now I'm like in contact with like how I'm creating intentionally. And there's a desire to want to share that. But then when you look around, it's like everybody else is like a few blocks behind you, right? And being diplomatic about it would be like, I'm going to, I'm so excited, I can't wait to share it for you, but I'm going to wait for you to get over here. Whereas you could be like, oh my gosh, you guys hurry up, I figured it out, like move your asses, or just be like, woohoo, I figured it out and you didn't. Not saying you would do that, but it's just saying like, we're going to practice tact. This is, the 7th house is ruled by Libra. Libra is very tactful. Libra is very good at like having the graciousness, whereas the Aries, its polar opposite, would be like, woohoo, I figured it out first. That's okay. But we're not being asked to like, we're just being asked to have that awareness around us as we move through things, that you might move through some stuff faster than other people at this time, especially if you're, listening to the messages that you're getting and staying in tune. You're going to move through this a little faster. So if you're with people who aren't paying attention to all these signs and messages, but they're also going through the lesson, it's one of those things where it's just like, they'll get here, and I can't wait to share with you what I learned when you do. Mental action at this time: realize the rules of the day-to-day reality of relationships. And this one really piggybacks off the last one here. Day-to-day relationships, right? It's like there's where we're going on a sort of like bigger picture level, but they're letting you know, like, you got to face it day to day. And some days you're really in sync with each other. You're in sync with your friends. You're in sync with your groups. Everything just feels like it's harmonious and flowing. And then there are days where one or both of you are off, and it's just like no matter, and that can even happen like within a day. Like this morning, everybody had kind of the same energy in my house, and we're like, everybody's like feeling good and flowing. And then 4 o'clock came, which is like the classic hit the wall moment. And I was still riding with that feel good energy, and everybody else had slumped. They were just like, huh. Right? So the day-to-day reality is that we move in and out of sync with each other. That the line that we're walking is never this straight line, and it's not even the same line for each person. And this part can be very frustrating sometimes, because I know all of us have those feelings from time to time where we're like, can't anything be consistent? And energy just isn't like that. It's like energy's not linear. It's not a straight line. It doesn't move in those ways. It's very like mysterious and confusing and sometimes contradicting, and yet works together. It's like a moving tapestry. It's a piece of art that's alive. It's just constantly morphing. And I think that one of the things it's asking us to be aware of is like, the thing that causes the suffering is not the morphing and the changing, but that there's a part of us that is really bent on it just being, just stay the same, just be consistently who I need you to be, right? When a lot of us are very rarely consistently who you need them to be. I mean, some people are more steady than others. Some are more fickle, right? And it really does, your planets have a lot to say about that. For example, if you have a lot of Mercury, this one's Mercury here, and if you have a lot of Mercury in your chart or in your palm or something like that, you are a mercurial being. You move quickly, you're in and then you're out, you're fickle, and if you have a lot of Uranus, or you had Aquarius prominently in your chart, you would also be an unpredictable source, right? So these things about this idea of like something being kind of locked in space and time and fixed, there's not a lot that's fixed. But the things that are fixed are, eternal, like Source creates and you are part of Source. These are fixed things. The immutable laws of the universe, these are fixed. But as far as how energy moves and interacts with each other, not fixed. And so we're being asked to just know that human beings are energy. You're more energy than you are matter, right? So we've got to account that just because we're not always in sync or always in harmony or always what we expect from each other, it doesn't mean we've failed each other in any way. And what has shown itself to you before will show itself to you again. And so it's asking us to, again, have grace and recognize that day-to-day reality of relationships might not always feel so fixed, but the overall theme is a pretty strong constant. So when it works, enjoy it. When it feels out of whack, just remember, overall, this works. Physical action at this time: act like a leader, get it out into the world, use the most business-like way, and get a fair deal. So one of the things I love about this, in connection with the message from the team, is act like a leader. This is always a call to being responsible, right? Like, I recognize or I respond to what's in front of me. And so again, if you go back to the story, they were telling you that this awareness is going to be there. And it's an opportunity for you to set yourself free and to love yourself through what you become aware of. As I love myself through what I become aware of, I put this out in the world. I take responsibility for what I find. And I put that newfound understanding out in the world. And I'm doing this in a way where I'm like, I can start utilizing it now, right? It's not something you have to keep hidden. I feel like the most business-like way is like, I can start operating with this. I can take this and use it as a new form of personal currency, that this is how I am in the world now. I no longer operate, for example, from a place of like a lack of understanding of my value. Instead, I focus in on how much value I know I have. I focus on helping people understand their value. And the more that I do that, the more I can use that as kind of like a currency in my life. And I don't mean necessarily with other people, but it's how I make decisions now. And it's how I choose to move forward, right? It helps me take the risks I need to take to move in the direction that I desire, because the more I recognize my value, the easier it is to put that out into the world. So as we become more aware of what was operating and how it worked and what we were telling ourselves and the way that we behaved with that information, the easier it's going to be to create the inner harmony and balance and start taking that newfound understanding and operating with that in the world. And that will get you the fair deal, because when we're not operating from this wounded place, but rather a place of understanding, we have a very different experience in the world. People treat us differently based on how we treat ourselves. And so I feel like what all it's letting you know is like, this actually serves a purpose. Not only are you just supposed to heal it, but you're supposed to take what you've learned and make a decision about who you really are, right? So if you believed that you weren't enough, and then you finally see, no, wait a second, that was just a belief I was holding. I am enough. Well, now you're going to operate from that place in the world, and you're finally going to get the outcome that's related to, I am enough. Instead of constantly coming up with it, why is this never enough? Why isn't it that people see what I've got, right? It all starts in here. And the fairness that you seek from the world, it actually starts in here first. Okay, so now let's look at outcomes for the sun in Sagittarius and Capricorn in the 7th house of relationships. All right, spiritual outcome at this time: the creation of insights to understand and dedication to achieve balance. There it is, right? It's all going to be there. It's all going to be there for you. You're going to see it, and something is going to change. And it only changes when we accept it. I love to use the metaphor of like, if I offer you this cup and you take the cup, well, now you can do something with it. But if I offer this to you and you don't take it, nothing, you can't affect this. This will not change. You cannot change the nature of this. It's just like when you discover something about yourself or others. If you accept what you discover, now you have the power to create changes. You can keep it as it is. You can turn it upside down. You can do all nature of things as soon as you accept it. So what this is saying is that there is an acceptance that comes in, and it creates not only the insights, but a dedication to achieving balance. Now something's working differently for you. Now you start to feel the harmony and the fairness or the ease that you're seeking. All of that was coming from that place of, I finally see and accept what's been operating behind the scenes the whole time. All right, mental outcome at this time, the gaining of respect from or for the wisdom of focusing on cooperation. So in this case, I want you to think about the cooperation I was talking about here between the higher self and the animal self, or the higher self and the human self, however you want to look at that. She loves him, right? She appreciates this lower nature, and lower is can seem like such a derogatory term. It's just referencing like where the energy lives at. It's not lesser, it's just not as high in frequency. It's in a lower frequency. The physical is. That's not a slam on the physical, though. The physical has a purpose and a reason, and it exists and is part of the spiritual domain. But she loves that. And she loves everything about it, including its limits, including how it can be so lost by the higher frequencies, right? There's nothing about her that looks at this energy and goes, you're not enough. She loves it. And that creates a beautiful opportunity for cooperating. When we are in rejection of parts of ourselves, we cannot cooperate. We cannot access all parts of us because we're rejecting parts of ourselves. And that rejection, we didn't do it because we're just inherently mean people or just unloving. We did it because we thought that would be the way to create the harmony and the happiness and the joy we seek. Is like, I need to get rid of these parts that are incongruent with that. But it never worked. It was such a bad plan. And, bless our little inner selves who thought that's the way it worked. They were mistaken. And so our job as an adult is to go in and retrieve those parts that we were like, okay, I guess it's wrong for me to have needs, so I'm going to put that aside and call it selfish, right? Well, now we have to go in there and go, no, my needs are valid. Everyone has needs, so do I. And I care about my needs. Now I need to go retrieve that part and stop telling myself it's selfish to have needs. I reclaim and I recover this part of myself. Every time we reincorporate parts of ourselves we've rejected, we have more power available to us to cooperate, to bring more of that higher self in and to start really creating with intention and a really dynamic energy. And so what this is letting us know is not only are we going to understand that deeply, but we're going to actually start focusing on that, really bringing it in. It's going to make more sense as we go through it, as we do it. And, we might not just do it once. We might do it a lot. We might have, some of us might feel like, man, when does it stop? Like, I've seen enough parts now. And it's like, remember, the team keeps saying, it can't go, these lower thoughts, these old beliefs, they can't go with you higher in energy. So if you're holding on to a handful of unhelpful beliefs, then you're going to have a couple of moments where you have to I got to reincorporate this part of myself. But have patience and appreciation that you're seeing them. I'd much rather in my own life see how I'm holding myself back or holding myself apart from love and clear that than to constantly be confused about why it just why is this not working. I would much rather go through the pain of self-awareness than the pain of confusion. physical outcome at this time, things brought to light or life resulting from the understanding of and from the rules imposed by your partners. Now this one's really interesting because when I ask my team, is this partners like people? Because they have alluded to some people in this, but in this case they're like, nope, we're talking about your other companions. So we're talking about your human self, your ego, and your higher self all kind of operating together. These are the partners that they're talking about. So the more that we understand like how each one operates, that there are literally sort of a set of rules, because here's what's really interesting is that we're operating within the realm of free will. And because these are all technically parts of you, they also have sort of a free will agreement. Now, what's really interesting is the highest part of yourself is the part of you that's going to be most aware of the other parts and their needs, and it doesn't cross those boundaries. It's not going to bulldoze you. It's only ever going to intervene if it is within the contract you set for yourself. So if you set for yourself a clause that like, hey, higher self, if I go really off track here, I mean like way off road, you have the right to intervene and steer me back in the right direction, right? So let's say you walk out into the sidewalk and a car is coming at you, but it's not your time to go, then you might get yanked back by someone at the last second, or feel like, an angel just swooped in and pushed you away. That can happen, but that's very rare that they would intercede on that behalf. So like when the ego is out of control and you're like, higher self, like, why aren't you intervening? Like, this is clearly an out of control ego who is manipulating the crap out of me. Why won't you stop that? The higher self is like, that's part of you. You have free will. And if you're choosing to listen to this voice, which to be fair, the ego can be very loud and very convincing, then you have the right to go there, right? So there are these rules of free will that parts of yourself are working by. There's also sort of the fake rules that get created by our ego of like, you're here forever. You can't undo this. You should feel ashamed about that choice for the rest of your life and never tell a soul, because this is going to be the end of you, right? That's a fake rule created by your ego to keep you trapped in the suffering that you're in so that it can be in charge, right? So there's these, it's an interesting conversation between many parts of yourself. And, a lot of times I hear people talking about the ego like we're here to kill it and stuff like that. And I don't believe that personally. I think that that's like, why would I do that? That's a part of me too. Why would I kill it? I think we're here to transcend it. And I think we're here to understand its function. And once you understand its function, it's easy to respect it, but also start separating yourself from it, because it's like, okay, wait a minute. This is outside of your function. So the ego's function is to create the illusion of separation so that you truly believe the choices you are making are authentically yours. That you're not being influenced by your higher self, that you're not, because you're not sure it's there, right? So you got this illusion of separation. You're not being influenced by your past lives and the choices you previously made. You're not being influenced by the knowledge you truly hold. You really think you're at this by yourself. That's what the ego is here for. And it is such a gift, because this is a big moment. The ego only exists within the third density. So when we start with that, we get an ego. It's the only time we're blinded to everything. You're blinded from your memories. You don't know where you came from. You don't know if there's God or not. You don't know anything. You have to decide all of these things as you're operating in this world. And that's the gift of the ego, is you truly believe like, I'm just choosing this. You're tuning in with your heart and your intuition or your logic or whatever tools that you're using. But the ego provides you with this blank canvas to get to be truly authentic and make these choices. What a gift it is, right? And that's where it's helpful. Where it's not helpful is when the ego is like, well, wait a minute. No one's here really but me. You don't have proof that anything else exists but me. And so I kind of get to say I get to like make this up as I go. And so, you know, then you get a sense of something higher and your ego goes, no, 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 no. Like, no, 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 no. There's nothing higher here than me. This is when our ego has crossed a line. This is when our ego causes problems. And this is when our ego creates stories for us that help us stay trapped in this very confused and disconnected place because it got a taste of, like, what is it? It got a taste of mammal blood or something. I can't remember what the line is from Arrested Development, but got a taste for mammal blood or something like that, where it's like, I know what power tastes like, and I know what being in control tastes like, and I'm not going to let this go. And so this is where we get into this ego fight, and people talk about ego death, and it's really, again, in my opinion, the only way to quiet the ego is to love it, is to appreciate it, is to understand its function, appreciate its power and its limits, and recognize that there's more to you than this part that has a story and an agenda. There's a bigger part of you. And as that part comes in and loves it, this is when we transcend it. And this is when we can actually utilize what it was given to us for and make these very authentic choices based on the fact that it's obscuring all other deeper truth. Right? It's how we are making the choice that third density asks us to make. Before we can leave it, we must make a choice about what this is. Is this all about oneness and working together and recognizing myself in you? Or is this about me and nothing else? Right? Either way, you're fine. One path is more pleasant than the other. But that's the ultimate big choice we're making, is what density do we go to next, and in what polarity? Will it be a positive and more cohesive and unifying polarity, or will it be a pretty lonely and long and suffering polarity, but you could gain a lot of spoils on that path by yourself? But it takes a lot of effort. So that's what we're here to do in third density. We're moving into fourth density. We're kind of in fourth density now. So that's why the ego and the stories and stuff, we have to look at it and transcend it. And we do that through love. And so whatever happens this week, as we move closer to that new moon and we see more about how we're operating and we learn and understand from it, we have this beautiful choice to embrace what we find and thank it for the gifts it gives us and thank it for its teachings rather than use it as more fodder for our ego. And I think that's what we're going to do. And with that, I am sending you so much love. Mwah! Have a beautiful week, and I hope to see you at either the new moon or the Epic Year Workshop or both. I'd love to see you there. But either way, I hope you have a beautiful week.